We have to go transparent. We have to make our people see the reality, make our people understand themselves better, their job better, their work better, and the overall global picture better. Once you're able to get that clarity in front of them, most of the people are on their own are able to travel to an authentic purpose for your business.
You're listening to the Global Workforce Podcast with me, George Britton. Each week, we interview an industry expert to dive deeper into the world of managing a global workforce and discuss the big strategic challenges that you're going to encounter along the way. This episode is brought to you by Omnipresent, the global employment platform that allows you to employ anyone, anywhere without having to set up an entity. Designed, built, and supported by global employment experts, Omnipresent takes care of your international employees and contractors, so you don't have to worry about payroll, HR, or compliance issues, making it easier, faster, and safer to expand internationally. My guest today is Kshitiz Sachan, performance management coach from Keka HR, the global HRIS provider, and excitingly, our newest integration partner that we're working with to simplify international expansion by allowing organizations to employ anyone, anywhere, from directly within the Keka platform. Kshitiz, welcome to the Global Workforce Podcast.
Thank you, George. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. It's great to have you here. I'm really excited for this conversation today. Maybe just to get things going, you could start by telling the listeners a bit about yourself and your background.
All right. So how to define yourself is always the trickiest question to go after. But all right. So I am a performance coach. What I do is, if you look at businesses, most of the businesses operate in a command-based leadership model, where the leaderships kind of decide what is the direction to go after, what are the goals to go after, and then almost everybody is communicated and they follow and they chase those objectives. So I work as a leadership and a performance coach, and I help organizations migrate out of these traditional command-based leadership models to more trust and purpose-driven leadership models, where more leadership can thrive within the organization at all levels, where people take more ownership towards the work and the value that they generate from day-to-day basis for business.
Amazing. That's, I think, summarized that really nicely. I've actually, about 6 months ago, read Turn the Ship Around, which is a book I'm sure you probably read, with the submarine captain kind of like trying to take this command-based model and empower the teams. It's, it was a really powerful book.
Yeah, I think that's the way of the world now, George. If you look at businesses today, no matter the kind of business it might be, it can be a very simple business of delivering a pizza to a pizza lover, to a greater than humanity business of, probably colonizing the Mars or making humanity interstellar. Almost all businesses are driven by purpose. But most of the times, the problems that businesses face is that this purpose only sticks to a few, set of people. So typically, it's important to build that force, unidirectional force of purpose inside the organization to make sure that all people follow a singular direction and go after the vision.
Yeah, it makes absolute sense. So Kshitiz, for those that aren't necessarily familiar with this, like, how would you describe organizational performance management, and where does it sit within the organization strategy frame?
All right. So if I take, to set a small context to it. So I pick up what I was explaining a little back, which is the businesses start with a clear sense of purpose. If you look at the founder almost knows what is required to be done. What are they opening that business for? What is that underlying need of the society or people for which they are starting a business? But then eventually, when people start to join a business, right, they all come with their own sense of, purposes, which is, it could be learning, it could be money, it could be sustainability, it could be, finding a group of people that they like working with, right? So there are n number of aspirations because of which people really come to work. So if we look at it, like, there is a misalignment in what organization aspires to do and what individuals really join the business as. So performance management is that side of the business which actually helps you take control of this misalignment. So fundamentally, if you look at it, the vision of the organization, it's a pyramidal framework. The vision of the organization usually defines the behaviors of the organization, the mission statement of the organization. The mission breaks down into objectives, which is, it could be department level objectives, it could be individual objectives. Those objectives break down into KRA and KPIs most of the times, which is the key resource areas and KPIs. And KRAs and KPIs are broken down into metrics, which is the tracking unit of an objective. So if you look at the entire organization, where does performance fit? Right in, performance management is that frame on which the organization operates in entirety. So it's a art of alignment, where the work that you do versus the work what organization is trying to do, it should come into some amount of consensus to really for the work to really happen.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I guess one of the things you mentioned just then was there might be misalignment between the company purpose and like what the company was set up to do. And as you say, like as every employee comes in, they have their own individual purpose, and there might be some misalignment there. I'm guessing that problem then gets exacerbated if you have employees across lots of different countries and you have cross-cultural challenges. What do you like? Is that, am I on the right line? So do you see that as an issue? Like what should businesses be doing to overcome that?
You're actually reaching the right pace, Raj. If you look at it, if I look at it from a psychological lens, it is nothing but a silos mentality problem. So as soon as you are running your businesses beyond multiple cultures or multiple countries, multiple regions, you will see that your people start getting into a silo. A certain set of people with a certain set of behavior will always behave in a certain way, right? If you look at sales folks, they will think from a sales perspective. They talk about anything that would be the perspective, because that's how silos operate within the workplaces. And that is happening with when you're building multinational organizations which are kind of catering to multiple markets. This is one common problem, that all the different entities or different set of units which are supposed to do similar quality of work end up working in silos and working with their own set of inefficiencies. So yes, performance management is that one tool which can actually bring that unilateral sense of purpose, one sense of direction of where we need to go as an organization.
Yeah, got you. And from what you're saying, it sounds like it's just one of those problems that comes with, not necessarily only happens when you're into different countries, but just as you start to scale, like silos are prevalent in like countries that only operate in one country as well, right? You just have one leader has one certain style or one sort of flavor of their perspective on the purpose, and then a slightly different perspective. And then you create these like echo chambers where people are only talking to people within those different silos, right?
Yes, exactly. And the problem is way much more complicated. Although like it looks like that this is just a silo problem, but a lot of times there are so many biases involved with the entire process of how we look at people, how do we look at different sets of unit inside the organization, that there is a recency effect happening, where almost work happening on day-to-day basis. Organizations, it's hard for managers to remember, it's hard for people to remember, and at the end of the day, when you are doing appraisal cycles, all of that inefficiencies do reflect. It becomes harder to take a call that who should we provide what kind of growth. So apparently, it starts with silos, but then it evolves into becoming a way much more bigger problem. To a degree where there is misalignment in work, right? Your leadership is trying to do something else, and in entirety, and one corner of the organization is working absolutely against to what you're trying to do at the other corner of the company. So yeah, so those are the scenarios.
Really interesting. Actually, our latest all hands, actually, our CEO described himself as the chief reminder officer, to remind people about vision, mission, strategy, values, all of those kind of things. So yeah, it's definitely one thing to make sure teams are aligned around. In your mind, how much of this is a people and a leadership issue, and what role can technology play in ensuring that you have these consistencies across these different silos?
Right. So although like a lot of it is inscribed into human nature, the problems are in human natures. But again, technology has its basic definition of being an enabler, and that is exactly what platforms like Keka, when you're deploying performance modules and stuff like it, that's what they actually try to help you with. So we try to sit around the natural flaws that you have and make sure that we are able to fill up those gaps. Now, if I talk about some of those, right? Fundamentally, if you look at it, almost all of us, as soon as we start living our lives, we are driven by desires and needs, right? Which is kind of if you've gone across Maslow hierarchy of needs, you'll understand how an individual eventually makes a journey towards becoming self-actualized or become purpose-driven. Now, eventually, if you look at this side, is the problem organizational or individual? It's an overall growth that we are looking at. So we have to identify who is in what stages, and then we eventually try to pick them up from there. So one of these cases is like, if you look at goal settings happening inside the organization, the capability of people to set goals in itself is extremely limited. Still, surveys tell that 90 to 95% people do not use a goal setting methodology, be it SMART goals, being, if you're writing goals, write it specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time bound, or modern day goal setting methodologies like OKRs or balanced scorecards. So while the workforce is not aware about writing structured goals, think work structured, that is the kind of outputs that they generate also. They are not structured and they're chaotic at times. So eventually, this is where these technologies come into play, that they fit in really well with how we should be operating ideally in work, and tracking the progress. So I'm a very hardcore believer of what Peter Drucker said, is that if you cannot measure it, you cannot improve it. And I think 60 years gone, it still stands exactly where ever since he said it. Yeah, we try to measure every single important aspect related to employees' performance, people's performance, and we try to measure and then give insights so that we can develop that over a period of time.
Yeah, it makes total sense. I'm also a huge fan of that. Like, it's impossible to manage something that you can't measure, right? So it's interesting. As soon as you start measuring a certain metric, then you start to see it change, even if you don't actively try and change something just by the act of measuring. Something I wanted to get your perspective on, Kshitiz, is it sounds like you're obviously a very global company at Keka, but also have worked with a lot of global companies. What best practices would you recommend to listeners for ensuring effective collaboration across geographically dispersed teams?
All right. So when we talk about workforces around different corners of the globe, one common problem is that the work that's happening at one center is not a lot of time visible to the other center. That is one, right? The other is we might be working for a very different set of purposes. So how do we fix those problems through technology? There are a lot of ways to do it. First, our technology would help you and your people to streamline goals more effectively. Eventually, dashboarding is a big problem, right? Even if the goals are written down, a continuous track of your efforts versus outputs over a period of time is essential, because if we do, if the year is gone and then you look back and you say that this didn't work, you cannot go back in time and improve it. So the idea is to share those feedbacks on a real-time basis. If there's a problem happening, you should be able to flag, maintain performance diaries, appreciate people when they really do good work, give them an area of improvement if they're failing somewhere, right? So this entire essential dialogue between the people and organization year round is something which can be solved through proper dashboarding of goals center-wise, and providing visibility across the organization. So I like this example, what Google did. In 1995, they wrote their vision, which was that we want to organize words information and provide it to everybody on planet for free. And if you look now, 20 years later, 3 lakh more employees, and this is exactly what they have done, right? They organize the word information and they provide it to everybody on planet for free. Now, essentially at that point of time, when they were designing OKRs, one interesting use case that they came across, and as tech was not possible, what they did OKRs objectives for all the different cities, countries that they had offices on, and posted, they created an organization wall of objectives and they pasted it into the wall. So that as soon as anybody walks into the office, they have a very clear visibility in terms of, who in which corner of the company works on what. So that kind of, improves the internal communication, internal bonding. And of course, if there is new opportunities which can happen, even those also come out as scenarios.
Yeah, I think that's, you see a lot of stuff written on walls, and sometimes I think it's good, and sometimes I think it's not as useful as people think it is. But I think I've never worked in a company the size of Google. It's enormous. But I imagine that must be a real challenge when you've got so many different thousands of people in so many different countries to try and get them all aligned. And that seems like probably quite a smart way to get something that's really important, especially for alignment, like just in front of your visual space all the time. Yeah, I really like that example. Another thing I wanted to get your take on, Kshitiz, is obviously we just launched our partnership. Very excited to be doing that with you. And what we're really trying to do is to simplify global employment from within the Keka platform. And I've got a few opinions on this myself, but I'm curious in getting your perspective on how important integrations are for Keka to enable organizations to drive high performance levels that you mentioned. And What's your take on that versus like all-in-one solutions?
All right. So first of all-in-one solution is there is one problem with all-in-one solution. Um, it's too big to manage. Even for the businesses who built it, over a period of time, when they start scaling it, they find that one part of the tech stack or one part of the business is working out really well. The other part starts getting numb and then eventually dies. What's the utility of integration? I think the words understand it. Looking at multi-billion-dollar industry of integration today, these integrations are definitely helping us build that data lake where we can look at the entire set of data, and our data can actually work for us at the time when it is required. So essentially, like if let's look at our own association, right? Your Where your work happens. So let's say if you are hiring somebody at your organization, and then that same organization the organization would be using an HR tech platform to manage the people database, to manage the people practices. So this integration immediately eases a big problem that the entire dynamics of people coming in, moving out, all of that can seamlessly happen, right? And the communication between the vendor, between the different set of work that's happening, even that becomes really, really fast. So that's one big benefit. And then the other benefit is that a lot of times, you want to look at outputs generated from one system and the other system, and you want to look them together, to get more logics, to get more ideas of how it is working for for your organization. So all of that becomes a possibility. So seamless integrations are now happening, right? So it's just one API call, and then the entire data reflects wherever you want, right? So that's the kind of feasibility that almost everybody looks at. Now the problem is that if you look at from a buyer standpoint, it was still okay, but when we go to the user level, right? The buyers are somebody else. Let's say the buyer is an organization. The users are the people. People have their own limitations. They cannot keep infinite number of apps, infinite number of logins at their level and manage, give their time on all those platforms. So these integrations kind of simplify that as well. You do your job once in one place, and it gets done everywhere else where it is required, right? So that is the kind of effort you saved for the end user, and that is why the organizations are picking this up.
Yeah, it makes total sense. I've got a few thoughts and philosophies on this myself. So I think in my experience, like you say, like these people who try and do too much often end up doing nothing particularly well. Like, for example, like we could have had a strategy in the past, omnipresent, of, well, we could build our own HRIS. We already have a platform. Some people use that platform. Why don't we expand that to, other use cases outside of international employment? The challenge is that like we then start to spread our resources too thin. We'd start to compete with someone like Keka, who would do it much better than us. Also would probably create an inferior experience for our existing users, our existing services. So we took an approach a while back now to like stay in our lane, double down on what we do best, which is create fantastic experiences for international employees to make them feel like domestic employees. And the next step of that is to speak to all the customers that are using tools like Keka and make that as seamless as possible. Like, so it's truly like a seamless experience between managing a domestic employee versus managing an international employee. So both HR managers who use Keka and the employees just log into Keka. The salary changes are all held within Keka, and they just sync through to omnipresent. The employee feels exactly like a Keka employee. They have all the same benefits and all the rest of the things that they would expect as a Keka employee. They get all of the bonuses and the salary changes and time off and all of that kind of stuff. Just syncs straight through, and this is kind of like the next step in that evolution of the world that I think we're moving towards, which is that everybody should be able to be employed anywhere, and it should feel like the same thing.
Absolutely. And, that's exactly the point. If you look at the dynamicity of things, right, inside a business, this is the way forward. We got to get our businesses together eventually, and that's where the marketplace concepts are evolving really, really fast. Because, if you can understand a certain persona and the needs of that persona, you can actually bring a bunch of services together to become a more powerful, center of services. So yeah, we definitely do look forward to more and more people onboarding our association. because the ones that we already done have given us really good feedback to really move forward with.
Yeah, amazing. I'm really excited. Now, Kshitiz, something else I wanted to get your perspective. We talked earlier a bit about these silos, and you might find silos within like a single country, but I think when it comes to cross borders, you definitely it definitely becomes easier for those silos to form. I'm guessing you have a lot of experience about like breaking down those silos and creating more transparency across these different global teams. Like, how can leaders start to think about that and make sure they are stopping these silos before they form?
Sure. So, yeah, so just not the borders on this, George. I would like to bring this on. So if you look at any business, the business is always made of, a business would always have a certain structure, right? That structure might have entities, business units, cost centers, branches, regions, hubs, right? So there are hundreds of nomenclatures of how organization structures are designed. Now, once organization structure is existing, right? The problems with structure is that structure will limit the freedom of communication because there's a structure in place. So let's say one of my branches in Dubai, there is like, I have 16 people working over there. A lot of times it becomes hard for me for a certain project that has come to my kitty, let's say in India or US. I need help of those resources. So, there is n number of things that I need to take a look at before I even reach out to them or, extend or, assign maybe a KPI or an objective in my project against those people who are out of borders. So having a technology or a platform like this can increase visibility beyond the borders, right? So, it's about creating a digital verse for yourself, a digital workforce, right? Almost no matter where people really are, you can stay connected. You are in office. If you are in Keka, you are in office if you're locked in, right? So that in essentiality is actually quite inclusive, if you look at it, right, the way it works. The other side is like, if you look at silos problem, silos, a lot of time, although, the reason is communications, right? Within an echo chamber, there is a set of things which are echoing, and then everybody's just thinking around that, right? The way that you kept it. Now, how do we break this? So there are a lot of methods that we actually brought into our system. So if you look at, we brought in a culture wall, which the platform has, where, organization department level walls can be created. You can share appreciations, you can share certificates, you can recognize people, you can share badges and awards with people. You can run rewards and recognition and learning programs from the same wall. So, you can actually build culture walls where whatever migration or change management your organization is going through at a certain period of time, all of that can reflect to almost everybody in the organization. Streamlining that communication, making it more transparent is something where it comes into play. The other aspect is, we also have surveys and, great place to work surveys and all other modules, employee pulse modules also designed in the system to capture on the pulse for different regions, centers, or branches that you have. So, if there is maybe probably one a workforce working in a certain country and another workforce working in a certain country, and there is a discrepancy in experience that your organization has, all of that the system will be able to flag seamlessly without, putting any effort. So those are the kind of benefits that we talk about when we try to go after the silos problem within the organization.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I really like the idea of the culture war. That's something that I think is really tough, like you said, especially if you're going through some kind of shift in the business, which I'm sure most businesses are doing all the time. One other thing I wanted your take on was time zones and remote work. One of the things, so we're a fully remote company. One of the things that I obsess about is making sure that things are written down. Like, you can't expect to just say something on a call and then somebody, like, even if that call's recorded and posted into Slack, like if you see someone on the other side of the world, like they're not going to pick that up unless you properly write down a thing. So you have to make sure everything's written down. We have to obsess about documentation. I'm curious to get your perspective and how have you seen businesses dealing with different time zones, and how to manage remote work as that's been in the last few years.
So as Keka is a time tracking software, right, where we kind of track time and attendance for people. This was initially a big challenge for us as well. When we started scaling globally into different markets, we found that different time zones, the shifts that people follow, the work hours that they're following, all of that is changing by a certain set of, hours. In certain countries, you would see multiple shifts happening under one one facility for maximizing production. Like if we talk about production based manufacturing plants. So in certain, like in these situations, the way we have designed our technology is that based upon where the user is logging in from and what alignments you have done as per the policy to them, automatically the tracking and hours localized based upon the time zone that it is there. Beyond that, if you look at a lot of other aspects which are required in terms of, for me as an individual, I want to look at my information in a transparent way. All of that becomes, having one single platform which provides the same experience to probably a contractual or a short-term employee also, versus the long-term or a permanent employee of the organization. Those are the kind of things which actually make, these platforms really worthy for utilization inside organizations.
Yeah, it makes total sense. I think from what you just said. How important is leadership in these engagements here? Like, what qualities have you seen leaders demonstrate that really help when people are going through these kind of shifts?
Um, yeah. So, well, there are so many leadership, models to follow. But I think, being vision centered, inspirational is something which I think, is loved around globally. That's how the world is now. Most of the workforce today are not, uh, they don't really come to work to just make money or just, feel safe or sustainable. A lot of work today that people do on around this planet is based upon the passion that they feel towards what they do. So essentially, leadership today is, it's all about developing that passion inside people. uh, how the way I look at it, passion has a formula. A person is always passionate if they have clear set of objectives, clear set of things that they need to do. If they have clear set of competencies which are required to do those things properly. And then the third aspect, which I believe is extremely important, is the core values, which is the set of principles which actually make a person decide that how are they going to behave with the people inside or outside the organization. So essentially, leadership is all about probably, encouraging people to rise to higher models of competencies, values, and goals in life.
So I think I completely agree with you. I'm a big fan of core values. I think they're incredibly important. I think that one of the things that for some companies, it can just be like a sticker on a wall. For other companies, it can be like you live and die by these core values. Like this is what we do or what we don't do. And I think one thing that I've seen work really well is when that kind of thing has to come from leadership. It's not something kind of, if you let it bubble up from the grassroots, like you get all these different things that start different purposes, different feelings and different ways of working, different opinions on things. But I think if you really want to instill core values, it needs to be part of all of the things you do. Like you mentioned, like the reward and recognition pieces, the performance reviews, like the hiring process. But also the other thing I feel about this is like, as you get higher up like everyone should adhere to like a standard, like, standard set of values to a certain extent, or, as much as possible. But as you go higher up the organization, like the intensity should increase. They should really, really be passionate about these things. And they should have objective, clear examples of them, like, living by the values. And I think that is the best way to casting it down.
Actually, George, if you look at our own lives, right? I've been around industry in 15 years. In the last 15 years, although my work has been driven by, how I performed on my objectives, what job did I land in, right? What project I got, what competencies or skills I have. But now if I look back in last 15 years, 1.5 decade of experience, whatever I have, the most important thing which actually brought me results were the values. My values, fundamental values, which can